What's up, mediums? Welcome to another episode of Live here at Keystroke Medium. I'm Josh Hayes here with the bald, the beautiful, the four-eyed Scott Moon. And today, Nick Cole returns to the show talking about his Dragon Con Award for Control Alt Revolt. Welcome, Nick, to the show.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you. I wish now that you said Dragon Con Award, I'm in my car today relaxing in Newport Beach. I should have had it. My plan was to have the award mounted to the hood of my car. I was going to do that next week. So I should have had it done already. But you guys called me last night, so I can't show you the award. But there's a picture on my Facebook page, and you can dig around and see it. And it's probably the most exceptionally beautiful award you can ever win.
It does look really cool. It almost looks like a is it supposed to be like dragon flames like coming out of the bottom of the mount?
Like that, or like a dragon egg that's bursting to life, or like, I mean, and here's like the really weird thing about this award is each one is individually handcrafted. So like everybody's award is mildly different, like, and because it's blown glass, like some of the glass shapes are like slightly different. The general teardrop shape is the same, but inside there's some sort of weird red glowing thing, and in everybody's award it's a little bit different. I happen to have gotten the best one, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Indeed.
Always the best.
Well, just to catch our viewers and listeners up just a little bit on what we're talking about here, Nick Cole wrote a novel called Control Alt Revolt, which had its own controversy and story behind the story, if you will. And then it was nominated for the Dragon Con Best Apocalyptic Novel this year and won the category. Nick, unbelievable, and
I'm not surprised. It's a good book, very entertaining.
A testament to what you did with the novel, and that obviously the controversy around it and it getting kicked out was probably the wrong move, and they're probably kicking themselves in the shorts right now. But can you give us a little bit of just a touch of history on the controversy with the novel? We had, if you're wanting a huge in-depth look at what happened and the backstory, you can go back and look at our previous episode with Nick where we talk about that. And let's have just a condensed kind of overview of what happened.
All right. Basically, I just wanted to, I was asked to write a prequel to the book Soda Pop Soldier, which had come out the year before and got a lot of good criticism and high praise and some sales. And they wanted me to do some world development. And I played with an idea that the typical social justice warrior, hence known in the rest of the legal documents as SJW, would react badly to, like my take on it. And I wasn't coming out one way or the other. I was just sort of holding a mirror up on this idea. And a sort of editor that I'd been handed off to because there'd been a regime change at that publishing house not have had a degree in gender studies, so she reacted super badly. And and then things went downhill from there. And then I was basically threatened, like, you change this or else. And so, like, as a typical writer, we all kind of vaguely think of ourselves as Hemingway, even though we're not. But like if with the average writer, if you were in Spain and they said, hey, you can run with the Bulls, even though that's the stupidest, dumbest thing you could ever do, because Hemingway did it, we would probably do it and get gored right in the butt.
Oh yeah.
So so my Hemingway came out, and I just said, no, I'm not changing for you. This is what it is. And there was a way they could have asked or approached it, but it just came off as a threat. And then what clinched it is they said, do this or you're finished. And then I took that, because my mom had the book Raising the Strong-Willed Child as sort of like a challenge to see if I was actually finished.
Right.
And
you'll never work in this town again.
So I love that part. So, I just I did it and I put it out there, and then it went viral because the crowd, there's a huge war in science fiction right now. and a certain crowd, the sad puppies and the rabid puppies, just said, hey, this is confirmation of what we have been advocating all along, which the Tor crowd has been saying there's no bias in science fiction. We don't pick and choose the stories, we just pick the best ones. So, the other side picked up and said, no, you are, manufacturing the stories to show an agenda. And now, like, this was the really tough part, was like, okay, there's all this hype. Is the book actually good? And so thanks to God, I think people really, really enjoyed it. Scott said that he liked it. It's just a fun, all it is a fun book. I'm not preaching to people. I just used a dangerous idea for about a page. Go ahead.
The thing I'd like to throw in there, before I forget, because I forget things, is what makes it interesting is that it has a very strong female protagonist as a large part of the book. And so I'm not quite sure why people are getting too upset about that. If you read the whole book, it's not just about the opening sequence. That's just the setup for kind of the, what do you call it, the inciting incident. And I think, if I remember correctly, that's what upset people, was they didn't like the inciting incident.
No, but we're reaching that, and so that's the condensed version. In the it just, it started off out of controversy, but then this crowd read it because they're so pissed off at the other side. Mm-hmm. They read it out of spite. Which is great. I'll take spite sales. And then they found out they liked it and that it was a lot of fun. And I played with, ideas about video gaming and Star Trek and artificial intelligence, which are all really huge science fiction ideas that are either being right now treated well. I think artificial intelligence is like the groundbreaking area where a lot of people are really sort of letting go of the old Skynet concept of an AI and getting into like, hey, these AIs could be just like us, but then they could be super intelligent. What would that be like? Two concepts that are being treated badly right now in science fiction. I would say Star Trek is being treated badly in science fiction. The movies are horrible. The company's response to the sort of fans is bad. The novels are stagnant. It's a property that's not being well managed. So I was able to go in as like what I think of myself as a true, Trek lover. I don't know that I would say I was a Trekkie. I'm not putting on the ears or going to conventions, but I played Starfleet battles. I watched every, TOS show. I faded out on later shows. And so what I really wanted to go in and write was my love of the source material. And so I was able to do it in that Ready Player One kind of way, which was fun. And that's all you really want to do in science fiction. You don't want to get on this high horse and preach or do things. You want to give people a fun, evening of reading. And I think that's the difference in the two sides. There's one side that's being sort of labeled and branded as, hateful right-wing people, and that's not actually the truth. It's just a bunch of people from all political spectrums and thought that's the biggest thing I found out about the sad puppies, which I really didn't know. I kind of thought when I first read all the hate articles about them on Salon or Wired or whatever, I thought, oh, here's a bunch of super right-wing people that hate science fiction. They're probably like me. But then as I began to actually meet them, I found out there's like libertarians, actual leftists, actual Democrats, everything like that. They're just tired of message fiction. That's the big argument. Yeah. So that was really actually kind of fun. And I really like this tribe. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And it kind of sucks that that with their move, like I get their movement, but with their movement, when you talk about awards for fiction and awards for science fiction in general, it's kind of brought the, when you talk about awards, Hugo pops up and you're like, oh yeah, that's a great award. But with this whole sad puppies, bad puppies movement, it's kind of killed that specific award. Like you look at it and you're like, well, that you've got a Hugo, great, but you bought it or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but now, like with Dragon Con and a whole bunch of other cons, it might not be like literary Hugo-esque type stuff, but you can tell it's the popular award. This is the one people liked. And so which one do you want? Which one would you want more? One that actually says somebody liked your book, or one that, is paid for by people that have an agenda that has nothing to do with your book at all?
It's a crazy time, but I would speak to the Hugos first. in that the danger, our society should always be a meritocracy. The danger that we have right now that everybody is clearly aware of is that there's an agenda and a movement to give people, quote unquote people, not quote unquote people, but quote unquote a chance based on something other than merit, as say race or gender or sexuality preference and all these things. And I understand the nobility of that concept, but the problem that no one does when they do that, when they play the long game of that, is it now makes it seem as though the person won basically. Okay, so let's take N.K. Jemisin, who won the Hugo this year.
Okay.
She basically turned around, like she had a long history of saying that there should be people of color in science fiction represented. She had this long history of saying that. And then she won. And many people said, well, you're winning now because you kept harping on everybody to allow Black people to win. Then everybody wanted to interview her, and she turned around and said, you shouldn't just want to interview me because I'm Black. You should want to interview these other people. And so the double-edged sword of trying to win on anything but merit is that now it makes what you wrote suspect. And so that was the problem with the Hugos, is that everything became suspect, as in, is this actually, and I'm not saying whether they're good stories or bad stories,
Right.
but is it actually a good story, or do we just need to let the gay Chinese guy win? So and that's just, hey,
Right.
people may react badly to that. Yeah.
I've never
Go ahead.
I've never looked at a lot of books don't even have a bio pages with pictures and stuff anymore. And that's, I've never cared who's written a book one way or another. I just want to read the book. That's the last thing I would ever been worried about. So it's sad that that's going to be an issue. I'd rather just read the book, regardless of who wrote it.
And it's only really an issue with this sort of super, weird, cliquey, not rabid science fiction fandom, but like, inner circle people who have made sort of the business of science fiction sort of a platform to advance a social agenda. But back in the bookstore in Walden Books in the 80s, I didn't know, like you could take what's her face, you could take the lady who wrote Quag Keep, Andre Norton, who's just an excellent writer and wrote the first D&D novel, and you would say to yourself, oh, Andre Norton, like that sounds kind of like a Black guy, or whatever.
Right.
No, it turns out it was this really old white librarian chick, and she wrote awesome science fiction, but you didn't care,
Right.
Yeah.
But now with social media, we get to access and we get to see, and there's certain people that like meet me and they find out, that I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in God. I'm white. I'm all these things. And they're like, I'm not going to read him because he's those things. And it's like, well, okay, but like the weird thing as a conservative, you're so used to being marginalized in what people like. I love Stephen King. Stephen King's completely left wing, and he's a great writer, but occasionally he'll just run absolutely left. John Grisham is the same way, like he just maligns every. But I like John Grisham novels, especially when they're about big piles of money. So I'm used to, as a conservative, just kind of like enjoying people no matter what. But now we have this new bunch that they've got to vet you, that you're not going to have any dangerous ideas before they even read you. And so going back to Control Alt Revolt, they were told that there's an offensive idea in there. They read the first page on the sample and then immediately said, okay, this confirms everything I hate about this. And then they tried to write reviews on Amazon blasting it and saying, this is bro gamer fetishistic fiction and it's male oriented. And the joke and the laugh was, as you said, Scott, it's about a disabled female gamer who is just awesome.
Yeah.
And they never got that far in the story. And you're like, it just, when
she
when
does
you
kick a lot of ass.
Yeah. And so it's sad to see that side. They're so glued to the agenda and they're becoming so rabid. It's very Star Wars. They're just like becoming Anakin. They're losing sight of the whole thing. And I do think the end, what we're witnessing now, the Hugos, is very much that Anakin in the volcano moment. The Hugos are dead for all intents and purposes. They'll go through the charade, but like who's going to go to Finland next year to get an award when they wouldn't even go to the middle of America? And the two people who won the two biggest awards couldn't be bothered to show up. So so then you juxtapose that against the Dragon Award, and it's a sexy, fun award that is rooted in fans and readers. It's not about, if you listen to people like Brad Torgerson talk about getting close to the Campbell Award and things like that, or about Larry Correia's experience, that there's this weird, creepy inner clique of kingmakers that are trying to sort of say, you're next, we're going to play this game. And the really awesome thing about the Dragons is it's just a bunch of people at a convention, and a lot of people who love science fiction, and anybody can play and participate. They don't have to, be the head editor of some obscure literary journal that nobody knows about.
Right. Yeah. Just to touch really quick on the reading it for the author and not for the story. It's funny because they want to be offended at what they choose to be offended at. And the people that are offended at what is in the story are the same people that scream, we want to talk about whatever we want to talk about, and we've got the right to talk about what we want to talk about, and they protest, we have the right to do this and that, but if it's something against their personal beliefs, then you shouldn't be allowed to do that. But in your book, you couldn't get more diverse than having a handicapped female lead character. I mean, who does that? I mean, the people that scream this genre is male dominated are the same people that didn't like your prologue for the idea, and they want a diverse main character. Well, you gave them that, but they didn't even take the time to get there. They dropped it on the first thing. I'm like, oh my God, this is so offensive. This can't be happening, because they didn't personally believe with it. And then they missed the great character that was the female. For some reason, I can't think of her name right now. But
Captain Mara.
There you go. Captain Mara. Yes. But she went on to be, not only was she handicapped, but she was a brilliant tactician, and, she could command these people in this fight at the finale and go through all that stuff. And it was very intriguing. And it's sad that, you open up this book and you say, okay, this white guy is writing about this subject, and I don't want to read it because of this subject. And that sucks to me. Yeah. Because I don't care. Like Scott said, I don't care. I'll read a book. Like I don't understand why it's now this who wrote it type deal, where can it just be a really cool book? And
but the other side wanted to make and we always have to step back a bit, and you guys, I'm sure, understand that in your day jobs. Sometimes you have to look at someone and where they're at, and you got to figure out, okay, what's this person trying to achieve? I get sometimes why they want to do it. I don't want to be so harsh and say that's stupid, but the danger of when you give something to somebody just because of what their skin color is, or some other ephemeral, trait, as opposed to the meritocracy of the story, what you really actually do is you actually are now the racist. You are actually now, the person that's actually oppressing them. You're the one saying, I'm only giving this to you because of your skin color, not because it was brilliantly written.
Yeah.
And so, it's, the danger is that there are a large portion of people now, because the Hugos have engaged in that so much, who will never actually read N.K. Jemisin or Bindi, and I can't pronounce her last name, because these two women are Black, and because they were elected to win this award. It seems because they were Black, not because the stories were great. Maybe the stories are great, but I'm just saying there is a large percentage of people who got full up from previous incidents who will now take it out on these people unfairly.
Yeah.
But this is the game that other side started, and you can't ever play that game. It always has to be a meritocracy. And so, maybe to an extent, social media is bad because you get to know people. But, I think, like, I go back to Andre Norton. I always remember seeing her name in the bookstore and thinking, Andre Norton seems like a Black guy who's really into military history, who probably plays jazz. It's just, and I still love the books and everything like that. And then I literally had to pick my mouth up off the floor later when I was like, wow, this is a very ancient old white lady from Missouri who was a librarian and wrote tons of great science fiction. It doesn't matter who is what, but we have the new culture now, and we're seeing it in this election. We're seeing it in the whole drama of the fallacy of the Black Lives Matters, movement, that, we want there's a group of people that say, just because you're something that you could never control, you have, merit. No, actually, America is rooted in you have merit because of the old Delta Force motto from the movie, not the actual Delta Force: deeds, not words. And
Right.
now we have this whole thing of, and that was so cheesy, but it was so right.
It is right. And I think that even with talking about the Dragon Awards, like, you win that because people liked your story. And I think that a lot of people are kind of getting, I don't know if fed up is the right word, but with the whole, let's make an industry and we're going to have these few people select who's going to be good in the industry. I think people are getting kind of tired of that. And like with social media, how you say, yes, it can be bad or it can be good. It's good that, people can talk about these things, whereas before it was kind of limited, to your town or your group, circle of friends. And, I'm an avid reader. Scott's an avid reader, but in the people that we know, we're like 2 of like 100 people, so the ratio is very low to be able to talk about the things you like. So social media is a really good outlet for people to now there's Goodreads that you can get on and talk about the book. But popularity is what drives, I think, in the future, going to drive sales over like pointed marketing, because
right.
You know what I mean?
What I'm seeing across the board, like if we like, I'm very interested in sort of food and culinary arts and fine dining and the whole food movement. And what you're seeing in science fiction is the same thing that you're seeing there. You're seeing, you should go to this restaurant because it's got a female Filipina chef, not because it's good. You should just, and I'm not saying she's not good. Okay. So then you move over to sports. Yesterday was Sunday. Everybody, watched, 24 hours of football practically. And what you're seeing is ESPN engaging in the same thing. They're like, it's no longer about football. It's about all these SJW issues. And really, you're seeing this in every profession. And it's a bad move. Like, I would say to all the major corporations, I would say to everybody, you're going to cost yourself here. With football, let's just use and talk about that as an example. The fans are already dissatisfied with the state of football, and now you want to make it about all this other stuff, and you want to whether they're making it about a lot of stuff that's not about the football, that's actually being badly managed on the field, with how long the decisions are taking, and people can't see the certain plays and blah blah blah. So I'm just saying, when you put all this SJW stuff into it, and you take away from why people are actually engaged in whether they like fine dining, whether they like football,
right,
whether they like science fiction, and you play all these shenanigans, you're actually driving people away from it. And people are leaving football and they're going to hockey because there's less shenanigans.
Right.
Same thing with science fiction. They're leaving your sort of message fiction and they're going after other stuff. And the same thing is going to happen with, I think, the superhero movies. Which we're already starting to see that big time in the and comic books. They're playing these games with the characters, and saying sexuality and gender and race are actually storylines. And people are like, no, beating the hell out of Loki is a storyline. not
right.
Not, or the Skrull or whatever. That's the storyline, not Wonder Woman's gay. And I just, went through 2 universes. So the thing of it is I would say to major corporations, SJWs are killing your business. And I'm thinking about writing a big article about how to identify them and weed them out. But I would say, if there's anybody who's in power or whatever, anybody, thinking about this and you're listening to this, you don't realize it, but SJWs are killing your business.
Well, and I think from both sides of the spectrum, both the people that are, even if they support what the people are doing, you're still hurting. Let's just say football, because you brought it up. You're still hurting football, because now people aren't watching football for either side. They're saying, well, the NFL is supporting such and such, so we're not going to watch it. And then the other side is, do we keep having to hear about such and such? I'm not going to watch about football now. So, let's talk about
sure.
Where you mentioned before we talked that you think that publishing is going to kind of get away from where it's at now, and it's going to go in kind of a different direction. Where do you think that direction is going for publishing?
Well, I would say the first, like, there's three things that I would say. The first thing is big publishing is about to literally DOA, to literally die. You're actually going to see it die in front of your eyes. But they're going to play this game with you, and they're going to tell you it's not actually dead. We're just going to be publishing all the major Cadillac clients, and they probably won't even tell everybody that. But what you're going to see is like only the biggest writers. Now, I don't mean like big writers that we think of as big writers. I mean like James Patterson and Stephen King.
Right.
You got to be that level to survive what's about to happen. So what's going to happen is Barnes and Noble is going to fold. And that's really big publishing's only pipeline and realistic major money distribution link to the rest of the world. So Barnes and Noble is going to fold. And then what you're going to see is they're going to say, okay, we're going to pull back. We're going to make sure that, you know, Stephen King and James Patterson are in the bookstores that remain, the independent bookstores, and really where most books are actually sold. Most people don't know, but they're actually sold either at Walmart or in grocery stores. And so, but if you go there and you look at those titles, they are not like titles that you generally read. They're titles that a lot of people read, especially people who work late at night. They're romance titles or mysteries or stuff like that. But you're going to have to really have some major sales managed by a major publishing house. So they're going to go into this sort of Cadillac management, you know, emergency crisis thing. They're already in that mode right now. If you look at Tor and what Tor is doing, they're telling everybody, oh, we're succeeding. And these are the people that basically ruined the Hugos and pushed everybody's agenda. But someone actually took a look at their pages, their book pages, what they're doing, and they're shrinking the print kernel count on the page. So they're trying to find a way to actually jam more words onto the page and make the book smaller. So when you're doing something like that,
they're trying to cut overhead, or what?
Why they're trying to cut.
Okay,
they're trying to cut overhead. So when you look at the internet and you look at like things that like Google are doing, or you look at like, you know, startups or anything really, like anybody creating apps or anything like that, they're engaging in aggressive new sort of like, let's do this new thing to hook fans in. Let's be interactive, like Straight Outta Compton. They remade this movie, then they made this cool app, and they said, hey, everybody put this on your phone and you can take a picture. And it was one of the biggest marketing, you know, genius schemes of last year.
Right.
But what Tor is doing is they're like, let's shrink and reduce. And that's our aggressive strategy. So if you look at the history of business, and whenever anybody has ever done something like that, it's usually, you know, you're basically treading water,
right,
and you're about to die. So that's what Tor is doing. Their growth strategy is to shrink the kernel count on their pages. And I probably have someone explained it to me, and they said if you look and analyze what they're doing, this is how they're doing things. When they gave someone like John Scalzi the huge bonus that they crowed and brayed about, what they didn't realize is they hurt all the other writers, and John hasn't actually delivered a good novel that they want to publish. The writers that they could have used that money for to develop, indie writers, they're just killing it, like Jasper T. Scott or Sean Platt and Johnny B. Truant, or this other guy that I know that's killing it and making 40,000. They could have used that money to develop those guys, but they didn't. They gave it to John Scalzi because he's the chief of that side, and he hasn't really delivered, and he's probably not going to actually earn them any money. So that's why they're shrinking the kernel count. So across the board, when you look at anything in big publishing, if you know, like the pulse is weak, there are open wounds. That, you know, if this were a trauma patient, it's critical. Like they're on life support, and there really is nothing. They tried a few things like, hey, let's start our own Amazon. Like when I was at HarperCollins, they tried to start their own delivery platform that was Amazon-esque. And so I had this reader who's an actual systems engineer for a major car company in Germany. And so he's one of those guys that tells you like, this is a system and this is how it works best.
Right.
Not just like mechanical stuff, but like how to deliver things. And so I said, hey, I gave him my free code and my login. I said, take a look at this. And he came back 2 hours later and he says, this is one of the worst design systems I've ever, it makes the reading experience unenjoyable. Yeah. So they did stuff like that. And they tried to like, the biggest, fondest desire of big publishing is that Amazon would just die and go away. I think in a certain way, because Trump is kind of anti-Amazon, they should be rooting for Trump, because I've heard that Trump will start antitrust stuff on them and everything like that. But, because they're such SJWs, they have to go in for Hillary. And so, Jeff Bezos is totally in for Hillary and everything like that. And I'm totally for Amazon. And I think Amazon's going to dominate and continue to grow and do great.
Well, and you mentioned too that you knew several indie authors that were making a whole lot of money, like $40,000 a month or $60,000 a month. That number that they paid Scalzi, that I think it was like $12 or $13 million or something. It was just a phenomenal amount, right? But when you actually,
I've heard his name, but I don't actually know who that is.
He wrote The Old Man. What is it? The Old Man's War.
He wrote Old Man's War and Red Shirts. He was the president of the SFWA.
Yeah. He's written some decent books, but I mean, nothing that, like, I've read The Old Man's War and Lock In.
I've heard of those. I just haven't got.
They were decent. They were decent books, but like this number that they're talking about, this $12 million or $13 million, whatever it is, it's actually calculated over a certain number of years.
How many books you got to sell to get sell through on $12 million?
Well, that's the thing. It's $12 million, but he hasn't provided any books yet. And so
it was a publicity. Yeah, it was a publicity stunt.
Yeah. So basically, with this amount stretched over, I don't even know how long it was. Let's say 10 years or something. It was a long amount that he was contracted under them. Here's $12 million, and this is how much we pay our authors. Well, it's really not. But that amount really isn't that big. Because when you look at
when you look at the rest of your life,
right? Well, when you look at indie authors over the span of 10 years, if you make $40,000 a month over the span of 10 years, and then you're compounding your income because you keep creating and all that stuff, you're going to make more than $12 million over the course of that 10 or 15 years or however long that contract was. So the money really wasn't a lot, but they toned it out to be a lot. And so
I know of two authors right now that are making a couple of $100,000 a month.
Yeah.
And they're working so hard that they're literally, they've hired a staff of 12 people to keep up with them. So that was where I was going to, you're absolutely right with Scalzi. It's not going to earn out. It was a publicity stunt on behalf of his editor to show. It was sort of like, it was like, militarily speaking, it was like showing the flag, even though you're absolutely surrounded. Big publishing desperately is trying to remain relevant. And by saying like, hey, we're going to give this guy a big advance. But when you talk to every other writer on the traditional side, the big advances are all shrinking. If you go back to the 80s and see what people got for advances and for book options, that was like the heyday. Now, you're lucky to get 5,000 and maybe, $1,000 for an option for a movie. Hugh Howey is the guy who is the poster boy of the whole movement. But to think that Hugh Howey or Andy Weir are indicative of the mean, they're not. They're very special creatures, know. And so that's an experience that with Andy Weir, I would say that's an experience that's almost unduplicatable. One, because Matt Damon got involved in his story.
Right.
So literally you have to get the biggest actor in Hollywood who can pick and choose any project to get a movie made so fast that it literally helps your book sales. Because if you look at Hugh Howey's story, what he's got going on, he's got a big director. He's got a book that's in production still, and it has no start date on shooting anytime in the near future. And if you really know Hollywood like I do, books can languish in development hell for 10 to 15 years. If Hugh's book Wool gets made into a movie in 10 years, it's lost all momentum.
Right.
It has to be made into a movie now. That's why Andy's story is so unduplicatable.
Well, and I'm kind of worried for Andy, because even if you take the movie out of the equation and you just have the book sales, with the audiobook and the print book, it did phenomenally well. I mean, you look at all the reviews and all that stuff. And I'm worried because his next book isn't going to be like that. It's going to be like Ready Player One. Ready Player One came out. It was a phenomenal book. Everybody loved it. And then Armada came out and nobody liked it. Yeah. I mean,
what do you do for an encore? Yeah.
Right. So like with
it's a great, first off, That's
Good
a great
problem
problem to have.
It's a fantastic. If I had that problem, I wouldn't be complaining about it. I'll tell you.
I
But
would just go cry on my big pile of money.
and you're swimming around in your coins like Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think with Andy, they took a cue from what happened to Ernest Cline. And I know Andy's the nicest person you can, as in I've met and done a panel with him. He's the nicest guy you can ever meet in science fiction. He's really a cool dude. Not cool. Cool sounds stupid. He's a nice guy, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer person.
Oh yeah.
I think with Andy, they dialed it back, and they're going to do some short stories, a book of short stories, and I think that will help distribute. But no, I mean, are you probably going to reach the problem with big publishing is often they'll give you in advance, or they'll put all these hopes like they did with Ernest Cline, saying this will be the next Ready Player One.
Right.
And it's just, that's very hard. Like you have to go back to that brilliant piece of writing in the movie Scream, where, the guy basically says sequels invariably are inferior. And follow-up novels generally are. It's very hard for someone to write at such a high level. And so I don't know, but then you have agents and people in the mix who are saying, well, I've earned this much money, I deserve this much clout, and blah, blah, blah. I think with Andy, they'll pull it off. And he and I talked a little bit about, just space travel and things like that. So I think he'll stay in the same vein and do something interesting. But yeah, I mean, is he going to write another Martian? When you actually look at the biggest writers out there, like Patterson and King, they actually kind of do continue just to write the same stuff over and over, interestingly. And there's something about science fiction where, like we're like bad actors who've gotten one, we've been on one hit show, and now we want to say the F word and walk around naked in an independent film and think that carries over. So what I would say to every writer is like, no, you should be like, I don't know what's a good, you should just be like Stephen King or James Patterson. If you write something winningly, just do it again. Shut up and take the money. Yeah.
Right.
Don't suddenly have to write, now I've got to write in the second person about, fantasy. But I'm probably more like the group that's criticizing. I'm the guy who always kind of wants to do something different, but
I would love to see.
I had a lot of
second person that actually.
I read a book in the second person, and I can't remember what it's called. The guy at work. It was a series, and the second book was in second person, and it was like literally stabbing yourself in the face. It was terrible.
I think Stephen King makes fun of it in The Stand as like the height of pretentiousness.
Oh, yeah, it was horrible. It was like self-torture to read a book in second person, I swear.
So you have a plan you mentioned for publishing and writing going into the future with this way that publishing is going. Do you want to share some of that?
Yeah, sure. With the impending collapse of big publishing, and what I would say, okay, so here's what happens. Everybody who's not the Cadillac client now has to run to Amazon. For the authors that we know of and love, take like just any name that you like, and I know this guy and I was up against him in the award, and I'm not saying he's this, but like an SM Sterling type, a guy who, like anytime a book comes out, you're like, oh, I love his stuff. I'm going to get that. The danger for that guy is if big publishing doesn't view you as a Cadillac client and they say, you're free to go to Amazon now. Well, you don't own all your book rights. They're not giving you that. And now you have to master the art of self-publishing. And so guys like Platt and Truant, who are geniuses, they're just burying you. And tons of, I'm just using that, they've got a system and a machine, and like myself, I've got an artisanal formatter, Kevin G. Summers. I've got several cover artists, Mike Corley being the best one. I've got 2 editors. I've got a team that, because, one of the great things about the economic downturn is that I was actually able to hire very competent people on my own, piecework, because these are people that normally would be absorbed by big publishing houses or by other, other types of publishing interests. So I can hire them now, but I would say that a lot of like writers who've had any kind of success but aren't Stephen King and James Patterson, they're now going to have to figure this out, and it's very hard to figure out.
It's a lot harder
and
than
it's a lot
think.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot, but it's fun. You just have to look at it as you're playing this computer game called Sim Publisher, and you just get into it and you like, and it's fun. It really is fun. But if you've had success, like if you're Andy Weir, and everything was so Cadillac for you, are you really going to get excited about like finding a formatter and these kinds of things? Are you going to be so I think we're actually going to see a lot of major writers who aren't Cadillac writers actually just say, I'm done. They'll go teach at some university or something like that, but they won't be able to survive. So there are two strategies that I think going forward that are going to be because the market, the fans, the readers is what I really say, and the independent bookstores and Amazon, despite big publishing's collapse, they're not going away. They're still here. They've actually grown because of Amazon. So the demand is still there, but the ability to produce content on the part of big publishing is not. And in large part due to the fact that they're paying for so much Manhattan real estate, and they're paying stupid, fees to people like John Scalzi and stuff like that. If they'd move to like the middle of Wisconsin or somewhere out into Wyoming and cut down on their real estate space, and look at like what .com industry type people, collectives are doing, and use that model, they would be able to actually grow, but they're not going to do that. So what you're going to see now is the rise of small publishers. So I signed with a small publisher to take over the print versions of a couple of my books, Castelia House, and then I made some new deals with them. They're out there finding new distribution deals. I just got a new distribution deal that totally bypasses big publishing, but gets me into bookstores.
So how do you
spell Castelia House?
The Castelia House is Castalia, and they're a small publisher in Europe, but they're able to actually distribute in America as a medium-sized publisher due to this deal that they made. So bookstores are still going to want new books out on the shelves. Amazon's still going to want books, coming in. That's part of the whole KU thing and everything like that. Big pub will die and they won't be able to provide these things, and they'll be hoping to coast on James Patterson, which they won't. So as they shrink, you're going to see the rise of the small publisher. The step below that is what I call the collective of really smart kids. So Yeah.
I want to be a smart kid.
Yeah, exactly. And they're out there. They're like really smart kids who have like figured out some marketing. They understand how social media works. They're savvy. They're hip. They're willing to rent some space, some warehouse space, and they don't even need that. That's like a luxury of success. But they're the kind of people that realize you can pretty much do everything on the internet, whether it's payroll or go to meeting, or that you don't actually need to have office space in Manhattan. So they're starting to form these publishing collectives. So let's use Platt and Truett as the example. They're doing everything right, and they're realizing that Amazon is a content pump to readers. So they're just producing tons of content for readers who are like drug addicts, plain straight up heroin-esque drug addicts, and that they choose reading over many other things, and they need to read constantly. So that audience and that segment is out there, and they're tapping into it. Big publishing should be going after these guys. They should be giving them Scalzi's advance, and they would say, I won't take it. I'd rather own the intellectual property. But that's where the smart money is now. And so the rise of the small house and the rise of really smart kids is the next step. And if you're not in those two things, then you're hoping for an Andy Weir-esque fluke, or you're just not going to be published.
Yeah, you're not going to win the lottery, and winning the lottery is obviously not going to happen for most people. I do have a pretty important question that I think of every time we go here is, with the small publishers coming out, how do you find a good one? Because I know that writers back long before Amazon came around are natural born victims for people who want to vanity press or just flat out take your money. And it's easy to throw something up right now, make yourself a small press, and then just let the writers do all the work and then just take their money. So if you're a writer, how do you find, what are some steps you might go to make sure people are giving you what you're paying for?
Well, I think like with Truett and Platt, you want to look at, you know, the success track record, what's out there. The great thing about Amazon and Nielsen Bookscan is you can see what's beginning to happen.
Right.
But again, this is where writers have to stop being stupid, and you have to understand the business. You should be doing everything that they're going to do on your own. You should understand marketing. You should understand book development. You should understand book production. All these things, you should understand the market. Writers, you know, and that's the problem with, if you've had any kind of success, are you really going to want to pull out all the metrics and dig into them and figure it out? And that, to Hugh Howey's credit, is something he's passionate about. You know, when he's not taking naked Tostitos selfies, the guy is passionate about the metrics. And so that's something every writer needs to understand. And the good old days of being Hemingway and stupid, and Hemingway was stupid. Hemingway was constantly broke, practically. But that was how writers were expected to be, living advance to advance, but living at the you know, the hotel that Macaulay Culkin stayed in New York. That's not realistic.
You mentioned that, but
you got to understand the metrics.
That's how people are now. Like I saw an article by what's her name? Cameron Hughley
Diaz.
Yes, no. She wrote the Shattered Empire, the Broken Empire, the Mirror Empire. Cameron Hurley. Right. It doesn't matter. Anyway, she wrote a blog, and basically in her blog, I'll paraphrasing, but she said that, you know, most writers, you're going to have to get used to the idea that you're going to write, but you're also going to have another job. You're going to have to do, you know, your regular job to get your income and then do your writing, but you're never going to be able to make enough to live on your own. And it's going to be tough work, and you're going to get the $5,000 advances, and you're going to have to consider that good money. You know, get your head out of the clouds. You're not going to get this big $1 million a year deal, and you're going to have to work, you know, at Dillon's or wherever you're working at, and then write. And I was reading this article, and I'm like, but that's dumb, because I've seen tons of people do it. Tons of people do it.
That's one of the guys that I was nominated for a Dragon with, Mark Wandry, who wrote A Time to Die, which is an excellent zombie, Tom Clancy-esque alien thriller, and I highly recommend it. He just tweeted yesterday. He's like, "Hey, I got my royalty check. This is more than I made," and he named a time frame. So, you know, when you, it's so funny when they say you're going to have to do it. The writers who went and learned the metrics and did it on their own, they're literally, one guy was saying, "I just paid off my parents' mortgage." And I don't want to say all this stuff because this is tough work, and I know a lot of people are seeing this as a way out of some difficulties they're in. But it's, you know, it's the combination of so many things. But the thing that I like about all these stories, that I want you to know, that I want everybody to know, is that there is gold in those hills. This is something where the battle is. What we're finding so much in modern life now is that you can't make it, or people tell you to do all the, like what we're finding with the education system. All these kids were promised that if you sign up for 4 years of debt and then maybe tack on another 3 years with a master's, you can move to a friend's-esque apartment in New York, and you can have a BMW, and you can have a barn wedding, and your life will be perfect. And they don't understand, like when our dads, you know, bought their BMW and, you know, or their, you know, midlife crisis car, these are guys that had busted their asses for 20 years.
Right.
You know, and we're making mortgage payments on a $20,000 house.
Right.
You know, not walked out of college, you give it all to me. So what we're finding in so many things in this life is that there is no gold, but yet you're told to go into debt and to work hard, and this is the way that you got to go, and there's no actual gold there. The cool thing about publishing is there are tons of indie writers on Amazon right now proving that there's lots of money to be made. And it's a lot of work.
You know, people, indie writers help each other out, but it is a lot of work, and people, I think some people, I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of people that are making $2 a month, and it's because they think, well, I'm brilliant, and brilliance pays, and so I'll write a brilliant book, I'll throw it on Amazon, the money will roll in, and it doesn't matter. You can write. I saw that when I was a young man. I went out to California and playing the guitar, and there was thousands of brilliant guitarists walking down Hollywood Boulevard. And none of them made any money. because being brilliant is not enough by itself.
Right.
No matter
it's
who
like
you are.
taking it's like working 10 to 12-hour days for rolling the dice once at the craps table.
Right.
You know, like, but that is America. That's why America's great. And so we have this whole system now of everybody wants to be promised a certain lifestyle. But the book that I really recommend this year that everybody goes back and reads, and I probably mentioned on the show I was on last time, was David McCullough's biography of the Wright brothers. To understand like what it took for those guys to build a flying machine for $12,000 on their own when the government was paying these other guys $100,000 in $1,900 to not build a flying machine. Just the sort of like, you know, America is a nation of hardworking gamblers, as in we gambled on, you know, the chance to do something, and now they're trying, you know, the Obama crowd is trying to turn us into these sort of Europeans who think that getting 2 weeks vacation is a basic human right. It's really not. You're not entitled to vacation. You're not entitled to a cell phone. You're not entitled to anything in this life. And as soon as the power grid goes out, you're going to find that out. What you're entitled to is a chance. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we talk about making it as a writer, a lot of people, readers and writers alike, think that making it as a writer means you have to make millions of dollars like Stephen King or James Patterson or whatever.
Right.
And you don't. Like you said, there's probably, what I hear on the author's earning report a couple of months ago, it's probably like 400 some odd authors, probably more than that are making a really good living on Amazon. And what's a good living? I don't know. They're not driving Lamborghinis, but they choose to make their living off of writing. So my level of where I want to be at in a couple of years is, I don't want to make, if I made $100,000, I'm not going to turn it down. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But my cap is to make what I make now at my day job. And that's 5 figures, mid 5 figures, if that. And that would make me very happy, I'm a full-time writer, author, whatever you want to call it, and I'm making $50,000 a year. And there are so many authors that are doing that because they choose to live a certain way. They don't choose to go and buy Lamborghinis or big houses or whatever, because that stuff's not important to them. Writing is important to them.
The other thing about that is that I want to have a career, whether it's writing or something else, that I could do every day and not be miserable. And writing is something I could, like Stephen King says, I write every day. And then he said something about he didn't write on his birthday and Christmas. But if you listen to his biography, he says that's a lie. I write on my birthday and Christmas.
Yeah.
Because that's what he likes to do, you know. So if you like to make quilts, and make quilts every day and be smart and make money at it. You know? Yeah,
exactly.
Tony Bennett, of all people, had this great thing that he talked about, and he actually got it from Duke Ellington. So maybe we're the only 3 people that get these references. But Duke Ellington told Tony Bennett, always have something else, because the thing that you're doing may not love you. And so I think that's what writing is for a lot of people, and it should be that. But if you make, you know, if you're doing your day job and you're making a good solid 5 figures a year, and then you do some writing and you pick up an extra, you know, couple thousand a year or whatever, there's no doubt that that doesn't help. But your day job can have times where it doesn't love you, as we all know. And you know, those moments when you say, you know, if I keep doing this for another 20 years, I might just break even, you know, with the kids going to college and all these things. But, you know, if you get to go live in a world of starships or Jedis or, you know, Conan warriors or, you know, gay dinosaurs, I don't know. I was giving a nod to that crowd.
Gay dinosaur.
Gay dinosaurs.
I think
there you go.
I think
It's an underserved market. I'm sure that we should write in it.
Yeah.
I bet you if we wrote in it, it would sell. I bet you it would.
Yeah.
I think that's what Chuck Tingle's doing.
I think,
you know, but if you do those things and you make a few extra bucks, it all helps. Even if just to take your wife out for date night, it's great. But what it does for your soul, you know, and those things are wonderful. But since we're talking about the business of it, it's not unrealistic to think that you can't do something with this. Right. If you treat it like a business. And, you know, I've read Stephen King's On Writing too. you know, and I've read everybody else, and that's what Stephen King will tell you. You know, if you're not reading, you're not actually a writer.
Right.
This is a business. This is something that you dig into to become a master, and don't expect the worst thing that can happen to you if you aren't a master of this business is that you get successful, because you might be deceived into thinking that's how it is. That's the danger of someone like Andy Weir. You know, like if you think that what happened to you was lightning in a bottle, if you think it's going to happen twice, that's a hat trick I'd pay to see.
Yeah.
Well, I had that. I had that with The Old Man in the Wasteland. I sold 80,000 copies. That's what got me my deal. I've never had a novel that approached that amount of sales. I'm still trying, still learning the business and all those kinds of things, but it's very difficult to be phenomenally successful twice.
Right, all the time. And I think that kind of what we're talking about is you got to define success for yourself. You know, if that means you want to work your day job so you can write whatever you want, not be worried about anybody telling you what to write, or have, you know, so you can be artistically free, that's not bad. But you shouldn't be afraid, knowing that it's hard to make it super big. I think people should not be afraid to say, I want to make $10 million. I want to make $100 million. You shouldn't have to apologize for wanting to be successful.
Right.
The other thing too that I would say, like in all of our favors, is you have to understand, like, if you look at the really,
we're losing some connection.
Did I lose you?
No, you're still there.
I just did. Okay, there we are. If you look at all the really successful writers, the ones that really come into their own, there is this whole new sort of, and I think it's manufactured by big publishing, this sort of youth wave of like, look at 23-year-old hipster beard guy. He just got this, you know, and it's like, okay, whatever. But if you look at a lot of the really great novels and people who you think of as great novelists, it doesn't generally happen until your 40s and almost 50s. And the reason that is because until that point, you have nothing to say. And I'm going to stand by that. You actually have nothing to say. It takes a long time of getting kicked in the teeth by life to be arrogant enough to tell people, I'm going to now occupy a couple of days of your time, telling people, you know, this story about what life is like. When we think of someone like Cervantes, this guy was a soldier, a one-armed soldier who had a lot of adventures before he wrote Don Quixote. You gotta go, you know, and if you look at, like, say, people like Michael Connolly, you guys are both in law enforcement, Joe McKinney, the guys who end up writing really great stuff have a lot of years of knocking around doing that stuff, and then it goes into the book. We have this new youth culture that's like, let's listen to the wisdom of a 22-year-old who knows nothing. It's it's better to, like, you know, whatever you're doing now and you're writing, it's going to inform that writing as you go on. And I think it took time for me in the Army, and time for me as an actor, and time for me doing every job from construction to waiting tables, to really get a novel that, you know, to get some things written that caused people to think and enjoy themselves. So, you know, if it takes a while, I'm just saying that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to make the most out of life, be attentive, you know, to everything, and, you know, and get those experiences. A lot of people kind of cruise through life on autopilot. They're a twig in the river, you know, so being 40 might not necessarily.
Well, let me put it this way: is an 18-year-old kid who just graduated with an MFA, well, let's say 22, with an MFA from really great Ivory Towers school, is he going to write a better police procedural than you?
Yeah,
probably not.
Probably
not.
But it depends on
their
experience, you know, it depends on what they've done, or maybe not a police procedural, but let's say, you know, what they've done in their life, whether they've just played video games, or did they go on, you know, go to Mexico and help build houses for the poor, and did they go on skiing adventures and skydiving and a lot of stuff you can do. But it's unlikely that you're going to have that type of, a lot of it, let's face it, it's about disappointment. You know, you get, life is very disappointing, and you realize that you can survive the disappointment, and it makes you stronger. It depends on whether you roll over for it or whether you try to push through, and if you can share it.
What's
that's that next part is, can you communicate it? That's where the playing field becomes even, because you can get the savant who can communicate, but if he doesn't have the life experience, what can he communicate? So
Right.
everything that we're all doing right now, the trick for us now as writers is learning the ability to communicate that. But if you look at guys who wrote great detective fiction, from the guy from Chandler to McDonald and stuff like that, these were guys who knocked around with the cops, read all the police reports, and then years and years. I think Chandler was an insurance or oil executive until
Right.
45, and this is the guy who is the pinnacle of crime writing.
Yeah.
So so there you go.
What we're coming up close to the hour, but I want to kind of touch base.
Let's go over. Let's go two.
Yeah.
Let's go all day live broadcast.
Marathon.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
I've only got so much coffee, but I still got some left, so I'm good.
What's up? What's coming up in the future for you? We talked about your Control Revolt, Soda Pop Soldier, and that realm. What are you working on now? What's up this next year for Nick Cole?
Well, unlike our politicians, I'm money where our mouth guy is. I'm not one of those people that tells you, let's make the rich pay, and then I don't pay. What I talked about was the small press thing. So I'm doing that. I'm maxing that out.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's a lot of hours in the day to write. And so the other last final thing that I think now that I'm doing in this sort of Truant and Platt style is I'm starting 2 new sort of monthly content release series. So one is going to be a subscription. I'm going to try the subscription method, not through Patreon, just developing my own system with a guy named Jason Ansbach. And we're basically going to rewrite Star Wars. We're not using Star Wars, but we just want to tell like Star Wars type stories.
Yeah.
Blasters and smugglers and bounty hunters, and not get bogged down by, you can't have hyperspace travel because of this and gravity. Nah, there's laser guns, there's stormtroopers, there's all this stuff. We just want to tell one of those fun stories. We're going to do it a month-to-month release. I think we're calling it Edge of the Galaxy. We're developing some cover art right now, and we're putting together all the content. And then we're going to do a subscription, really cheap. You get all this content. You get access to stuff. So that's one way. With Michael Bunker, we're going back and picking up a series that we wrote called Texocalypse Now. And it's basically sort of like a post-apocalyptic wasteland that's really big into tunnels. That's the big thing. And we're going to do that as a monthly content release. And at the same time, I've wanted to sort of get into the fantasy market. So unlike the advice that I gave of like, find what you're doing well and do it right, I probably should be writing more Soda Pop Soldier stories and Control Alt Revolt stories. But because I'm the actor who wants to swear and use the F word and walk around naked, I'm going to wear fantasy. I don't want to do those things. I'm gonna make my independent fantasy movie.
Our next episode with Nick Cole is going to have a big blurry spot in the middle while he's walking around his house drinking coffee on the show.
Well, that's what every actor, like, oh, Harry Potter's in that. I love you or whatever actor that you like. Give it time, and they'll do this terrible movie where they use the F word and walk around naked. And you're right. You're now stretching yourself as an actor. So the literary equivalent is you leave post-apocalyptic and you go write, Brandon Sanderson-esque fantasy or Tolkien-esque fantasy.
Nice. So you've got those 2 things coming up. I listened to Jason's Indie Revolution podcast, The Outlaw.
Literary Outlaws.
Literary Outlaws.
Literally Outlaws.
And he does that with Kevin G. Summers, who you mentioned earlier does your book formatting.
Yes.
And we've had Michael on the show as well, Michael Bunker, talking about his new projects. It's very interesting to me that when you mentioned earlier the collective of smart kids, I mean, you're in one.
Yes.
I mean, you and Kevin and Michael and Jason and your cover artist Corley. You're in that collective, and that's very cool to see. And I've seen several people that are like that. They have their group, and they are very successful because they bounce things back and forth, and they work together, and that's very cool.
Yeah, Bunker is the savviest independent publishing guy that I know, and his novel that he's writing right now, Hell in the Sea, is probably gonna get him killed by Amazon. It's pretty inflammatory, but it's great, and the writing is absolutely brilliant. And he's just the way that I don't know if it's a Texas thing or the Amish thing or whatever, but no one knows how to do business like that guy. And for a guy who's probably roughly my same age, he's got the smarts of like a .com kid.
Right.
Jason Ansbach is the very he's looking at him and doing, and him and I was kind of mentoring him a little bit, but then he was actually teaching me a lot more. And then that was when I put the concept together of get yourself a cabal of very smart kids. Right. Let's say VSK, get some VSK around you. I'm 48 years old. My definition sometimes of cool is like Tom Cruise and Top Gun. Like if I could look like anything right now, I'd say like, I'd like to have a leather jacket, and aviator sunglasses, and that's not cool anymore. Like as like literally it's beards and flannel shirts and craft cocktails. That's cool now. So sometimes us older guys, we have to get with the young, and we have to, allow them to sort of develop us. And so I would encourage
I make some movie references every now and around some of my coworkers, and they just look at me, and I'm like, I can't speak for like 5 minutes because I'm so stunned.
My favorite one is you're like, there he went, and you're going like, where'd who go? And nobody gets it. They're like, what are you talking about? Like Top Gun, Goose.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I always say to my wife, talk to me, Goose, and she has no idea what that
means. I was having fun listening to you guys. I had to mute my mic because apparently our tornado sirens check every Monday at noon, and it's been going on for like 5 minutes. It's loud. So.
Very nice. Very nice.
Welcome to Kansas.
Well, Nick, it's been a pleasure having you back on the show.
Thank you guys.
Thanks very much for coming on short notice, and it's always a joy to talk to you and hear your thoughts on
lots of great insights. So
thank you. And just, anytime you guys want to have me back on, or, even if you guys want to talk about anything, back channel or whatever. I think what we all talked about in this podcast is we're all in this together. And that's, and again, that's a Hugh Howey point, readers don't just buy one book.
Right.
So the more we all help each other, the more books we'll sell. And we are like the drug dealers that you guys deal with probably on a daily basis.
Maybe slightly nicer, slightly nicer,
slightly less. All we've got to do is, well, maybe. I know some writers, but
equally as crazy.
We've just got Forbes West. We've just got to give them a taste, and they'll get hooked. And that's right. This is a good drug that's actually going to save people's lives. But it really is,
medicine.
Medicine. Take your medicine.
It's word medicine.
But reading a book will take you more places than an airplane ever will.
Absolutely.
And so this is something we're all in it together. So anybody listening to this podcast or whatever, if you need help and you want to talk about writing or whatever, contact me. I'm more than happy to help.
Oh, great segue. How can people contact you?
Contact me at, I'm still on the dying Twitter, which is also going to die, but you can go over to my website at nickcoldbooks.com, or you can just Facebook me at Nick Cold Books or one of my Facebook profiles, and just direct message me and we'll talk.
Awesome. Well, this has been the show of dying things. I think a million things have died during the process of this interview, and rightfully so. Thanks, everybody, for watching. If you're watching on a live feed, if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for listening. Be sure to go back and listen to our first interview with Nick. Actually, I think that might have been our second episode, but you can find that back in our archive history, and it's on our website, keystroke.medium.com. Hope everybody has a great week. And
subscribe and like the YouTube, please.
Subscribe and like the YouTube. We are almost to the threshold.
The
podcast. Yes. Rate the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're almost at that threshold that we need to take the next step on YouTube. So if you are watching it, like it. It takes 1 second to go click it.
Yeah, and also just share it on Facebook and tell your grandmother to like, because grandmothers love to like things you like.
Yes,
that is cool.
absolutely.
That is true. Very true.
Like it, Granny. Like it.
Oh my gosh! Then it went wrong. So wrong.
That's a whole different show.
That's a ridiculous show. And all right, so everybody have a good week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll holler at you guys later. Bye.
Yep.